This is Martin Giles of the Guildford Dragon News, and this evening I'm with Bob Hughes, who is the chairman of the Guildford Conservative Association. Thank you, Bob, for giving us your time this evening. Now, local party chairman is a background role, and I think a lot of people haven't got a clue what you do. So can you describe what that role is?
Well, it's really running the mechanics of the local party, making sure that we're ready for any elections, that we've got candidates in place. I don't choose the candidates, or the officers don't choose the candidates. What we do is to make sure that anybody who wants to be a candidate is thoroughly vetted before we allow them to be one of our candidates. And of course, raising money, that's a big part of it. Can't fight elections without money.
And policy?
No, policy is a matter for the people who are elected. So yes, I discuss policy with the councillors, and people have strong views about everything under the sun. And of course we discuss it with the county councillors and with Anne Milton. But in the end, that's a matter for them.
Okay, so tell me something about your background. You were an MP and a junior minister once, weren't you?
Yes, that's right, yeah.
So tell me a bit about that.
Well, I was 10 years a Member of Parliament for Harrow, and I was lucky enough to be a government whip for a couple of years. I took through what up until now had been the most difficult bill through the House of Commons since the Corn Laws, which was the Maastricht Bill.
Since the Corn Laws?
Since the Corn Laws. That's what I'm told. I don't remember it,
Right.
needless to say. And so I think we did very well on that, and I was promoted into the Cabinet Office, not the Cabinet, the Cabinet Office, where I looked after big science and citizens' charters and civil service matters other than pay.
Okay, and you also work for the BBC?
I was with the BBC 14 years in TV news.
So why did you come to live in Guildford?
Because I now run a wonderful charity called Sight for Surrey, delivering sensory services, and we're based in Leatherhead, and I was looking around and Guildford seemed absolutely splendid place to live.
And where are you living in Guildford?
I'm living up in Farley Green.
And how did you become chairman of the Guildford Conservative Association?
Well, I'd not been involved in politics very much for probably 10 years, apart from general elections, helping where I had been the Member of Parliament. But so I got active in the 2015 general election, and I said that really stupid thing that people tend to say, which is, if there's anything you want me to do other than just helping in the election, do let me know. And one of our councillors elected that year, Alex Chesterfield, was heavily pregnant, doing an MBA, and was elected as a councillor, somewhat surprisingly, but she was a great councillor.
This was in 2015?
In 2015.
Yeah.
And so people banked the cheque of saying, if you want to do something, and I became deputy chairman.
Moving on now to the recent election, obviously it wasn't a successful one for the Conservatives, and you've been left with just 9 seats on the Borough Council. What do you think went wrong?
I think there are 2 issues. The party will be meeting in a few weeks to go over it, and everyone can express their view about what they think we did, what we could have done. But firstly, you've got the background of Brexit. I'm not going to comment on that specifically, but it looks incompetent. The Prime Minister said we would leave by the 29th of March, and we haven't. And people of every hue of opinion about Brexit are cross. Remainers are cross, people who accept we need to leave because of the referendum, they're cross, people who want Brexit are cross. And against that background, we then had the local plan. Now, the Conservative group didn't plan for it to be coming up with that timescale, but I think they were right in terms of their duty as a controlling group in the council to put it through at that point. But the politics of it was not good. And I think people, having had almost thrust on them the freedom not to support the party they normally support, thought, well, here's some people who are saying things that we think are sensible. I have to say, I think a lot of the things said about the local plan are fanciful, to put it at its politest. And it's interesting that some people are rowing back from that since the election. But nevertheless, people came to believe that it can't be a good plan, otherwise they wouldn't force it through like that. And so I think those 2 things were really toxic. And we think a largest chunk of our vote stayed at home, and a largest chunk of our vote went to other parties.
Okay, the turnout wasn't that low though, was it?
A bit lower. It's normally very high in Guildford, and it was lower than we would have expected.
Were you proud of the local plan or not?
Yes, I am. Absolutely,
Okay,
yes.
so this is the Guildford Times.
Yeah.
This is part of your election campaigning material. And I've read it carefully. I couldn't find one mention of the local plan in there. What, if you were proud of it, why didn't you mention it?
Well, don't forget that was published quite a long time before we got to the elections.
Yeah, but the
There's a
local
long
plan
lead
has
time.
been
Yes,
going.
I understand that, but it runs through a number of the issues that are discussed in there, and certainly it was in the later material. We put out a lot of literature during this election.
It's still a bit strange, isn't it? You're saying local elections are all about bins, not Brexit. But, you know, the local plan was a much bigger issue than the bins.
It became a much bigger issue. I don't think at that point people expected it to be that sort of issue.
Really?
Yes, no, I think that is right. Yes, I mean, you think how quickly that became such a big issue. A number of things being said that it wouldn't protect the green belt. I noticed that some, not all, but some of the residents for Guildford candidates were saying there were going to be 4,000 extra houses on top of what was needed in the green belt. Of course, that was never true, and they must have known that wasn't true. But nevertheless, people started to believe that. So it became an issue that had not been expected previously.
Okay. So how did... You mentioned about the plan going through. Did you notice an impact from that event to polling day? It was just a week.
Yes.
You
Yes,
did?
I did. Absolutely, yes. Yes, it was very clear. There were a lot of questions about the local plan, and a lot of people who plainly were going to vote would almost always vote Conservative. People were apologising on the doorstep saying, look, I always vote Conservative and I will do in the next general election, but I can't do this time. And it was either the plan or Brexit or both.
Okay. Now, when you have this wash-up, you say is going to be in a few weeks' time, don't you think people will say, well, you presided over this election campaign as the chairman, and Paul Spooner, he was the leader at the time. Shouldn't you resign?
Well, people can say what they want. I suspect people
But it would
won't.
be a natural question, wouldn't it?
It would be a natural question, absolutely, yes. I think we fought a significant campaign. We had our candidates in place early. I think we targeted correctly. I know it doesn't look like it, but I think our targeting was appropriate. People can decide to say what they want. It's up to them.
Okay, but you don't feel that... Do you feel it was outside factors that were the main problem, not your organisation or Paul Spooner's leadership?
I think so. I've got, I have questions myself about the targeting of some of the literature. I think we could have done our literature differently. I think we probably in some areas could have knocked on more doors. But, in the end, I don't think any of it would have made any difference.
Right. Okay. And finally, as you know, Paul Spooner has cut off communications with us at the Guildford Dragon. You've kindly given us your time this evening. Do you disagree with his decision to do that?
Well, I'll tell you what I think, which is I think one should always engage with the press. I think you have a growing readership. And I think you're focused on what's going on in Guildford. The fact that I or any of my colleagues might disagree with you on some things, well, that's just real life, isn't it? I come from a journalistic background, and I think it's really important to engage.
Okay. Well, on that, thank you very much for your time this evening, and good luck.
Thank you.